Alright guys, so today we are going to be working on solving two-step equations with rational numbers, aka fractions. So we've already gone through solving one-step equations and solving two-step equations. And lastly, we're going to focus on solving two-step equations that include fractions in them. So go ahead and write this objective at the top of your paper where you're taking your notes. And now let's get into it. So remember, your main goal for solving equations is always to isolate your variable, use inverse operations, and then our golden rule for solving equations says whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side. So make sure that you have all three of those things in your notes. Your main goal is isolating the variable and to use inverse operations in doing that. And then your golden rule for solving equations is whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So pause the video, write this down if you don't already have it in your notes. Okay, so first off, I'm going to start with this problem. So go ahead and write this down with me. 1/4 times x plus 1/4 equals 1/2. Now, I'm going to go through this problem. Oops, let me get a better color. Let's do that one. Okay. I have a nice blue color now. I'm going to go through this problem with my thinking, and then we'll do a few more examples, and then I'm going to show you guys a shortcut. So here, the first thing I want to undo is any addition, right? I want to undo any addition or subtraction. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 1/4 on both sides. I'm going to draw my line too. Subtract 1/4. So now my 1/4s cancel there, so I'm left with 1/4 times x, and that would be equal to, well, 1/2. I'm going to show my work off to the side, minus 1/4. Can I just go through and subtract that? And I'm left with 0 over -2? No, I need a common denominator. So my common denominator here would be 4, so I need to multiply my 1/2 times 2 over 2. So I end up with 2 over 4 minus 1 over 4, which now when we subtract that, we get 1 over 4. So now my equation reads 1/4 x equals 1/4. Lastly, I need to get rid of this 1/4. So in order to do that, I'm going to multiply times the reciprocal, or multiply times 4 over 1. And I got to do that always on both sides. So now those cancel. I'm just left with x equals 1/4 times 4 over 1. I can do that multiplication to get 4 over 4, which I can simplify to get 1. So I end up with x equals 1. Let's go ahead and try another one here. Write this problem down for me. And how about you try this one without me going through it with you? All right, so now let's see how you did and walk through this. So the first thing I need to undo is my addition, my adding 1/6. So I'm going to subtract 1/6 on both sides. When I do that, my 1/6 cancels on the left-hand side. I'm just left with 1/3 x, and that's equal to 5 over 12 minus 1/6. Well, I need a common denominator, so this would actually be multiplied times 2, so my denominator is 12. So 5 over 12 minus 2 over 12 to give me 3 over 12, which you should know you can simplify that to 1/4. So now I have 1/3 x equals 1/4. Now I need to get rid of that 1/3, so I need to multiply by my reciprocal of 3 over 1 on both sides. Don't forget, what you do to one side, you must do on the other. So you get x equals 3 over 4. Now that's funny. I got a fraction. Does that mean I did it wrong? No, not actually. You can get fractions for your answers, so from now until the end of the year, if you get fractions when you solve equations, that's okay. And we can actually plug this back into our equation just to check it and see if we got it correct. So let's go ahead and do that now because, I don't know, when I get fractions sometimes I'm like, uh-oh, that means I did something wrong. So we're going to multiply 1/3 times 3/4 plus 1/6, and I want that to be equal to my 5/12, which I have over here. So let's simplify that and see if we get that. First thing, if I'm using my order of operations, I need to multiply. So I see my 3's actually can simplify diagonally, so I get 1/4 plus 1/6. Uh-oh, I need a common denominator. Yes, that would be 12 in this case, so I need to multiply this fraction by 3/3 and this fraction by 2/2. So I'm left with 3/12 plus 2/12. When I add that together, do I get 5/12? Yes, I do. So I know I got my answer correct. Now, I'm sure a lot of you would prefer to not work with fractions. I would definitely be with you. Fractions are confusing and they can make you think too much. And we're mathematicians, we're lazy, so we don't want to have to work with them. So here's a shortcut for you. If you take a look at your equation, first you want to find a common denominator. So if I have denominators of 4 and 2, what would my common denominator be? 4. So I'm going to multiply every term in my equation by 4. Multiplying everything by 4. So this can look a little confusing, but bear with me. In order to do this, I'm first going to divide by this denominator. So I'm going to divide 4 by 4. And when I do that, I get 1 and 1. And now I get to multiply my 1 times my numerator. 1 times 1 equals 1x. Same thing over here, 4 times 1/4, so I need to divide by my denominator. I get 1 and 1. So I'm left with plus 1 equals, last one, 4 divided by 2 leaves me with 2. 2 times 1 in my numerator gives me 2. Now how much easier does that equation look? So now I can just draw my line and solve like usual. Subtract 1, I'm left with x equals 1. See how much easier that was? So this is a process called clearing the fraction. Let's go ahead and try it again with another problem. Let's try it with a different problem. So 2 equals 2/7x minus 6. So make sure you have this down in your notes. The first thing that we're going to look for is what is our common denominator so we can clear out that fraction. Well, I only see one denominator here of 7. So I'm going to multiply every single term by 7. 7 times 2 is 14, would equal. Now here I have a fraction, so I need to divide 7 by 7 to get 1. 1 times 2 is 2x. 7 times -6 is -42. So now I can draw my line here. And the first thing I need to do is get rid of that -42, so I'm going to add 42 on both sides. My 42's cancel. I'm left with 2x on the right side. And then 14 plus 42 gives me 56. Divide both sides by 2. You might have to do some long division off to the side for this one, but x would equal 28. Okay, one last one. So write this problem down in your notes. 4/5x plus 4 equals 1/4. So first thing, I need to get rid of these pesky fractions, so I need to find a common denominator. I have a 5 and I have a 4, so think for a second, what would your common denominator be? If you were thinking 20, you would be correct. So I'm going to multiply every term by 20 to get rid of my fractions, or clear my fractions. So we're going to do 20 divided by 5, which leaves me with 4. 4 times 4x would be 16x. 20 times 4 is 80. And that equals 20 divided by 4 leaves me with 5. 5 times 1 is 5. All right, so let's solve this equation. First thing we need to do, subtract 80 on both sides. My 80s cancel out. I'm left with 16x equals 5 minus 80. Think back to those integer rules. You should get negative 75. And now we're going to divide by 16. So once you do that, you should be left with x equals negative 75 over 16. Now your instinct might be to write that fraction as a mixed number, but actually from this point on, I'm okay with you leaving your fractions as improper fractions. As you get into higher levels of math, a lot of your teachers would actually prefer you to leave them as improper fractions, so this is where we're going to start doing that. All right, so that was our last problem. So make sure you have all of your notes nice and neat and tidy. Go show your sub your notes so that you can start working on your assignment. Great job, guys, and I will see you soon.